Hey everyone, good to meet you all. As Kelvin said, I'm Saumitra. It's an honor to be moderating this panel. We have our roots in Salt Lake. Many of you guys know my co-partner Brandon. Of course, you heard from Caitlin earlier today as well. Very excited to be moderating this panel. After talking to my co-panelists, I think what would be most fun is we're going to do some quick intros. We're going to do just like a very brief, structured conversation, and then open it up to the audience to see what questions you guys have for the panel. So I was thinking we'd start with quick introductions. We can just go down the panel chat. I'll put you in the hot seat. I was thinking a brief bio, who you are, what you invest in, and then what led you to venture capital.
So I'm Chad Norman. I'm with Avenue Capital Group. We're about a $12 billion asset manager out of New York. Our fund is the Avenue Venture Opportunities Fund, which is a debt and equity fund, about $500 million. I've been in the business for about 20 years. I'm a former Army combat medic, so I have a little bit of practical life science experience. I've been doing this for, like I said, 20 years. About half the fund is dedicated to life science exclusively, and half is for tech. And again, I live in Park City, and I'm very happy to be here. What brought me originally into the business was the ability to look at very cool companies, very cool technologies, and make a difference, and hopefully make some money along the way.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Andrea Jackson from Northpond Ventures. Thank you all for the powder. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. It's great timing. We are a $2 billion life science and healthcare venture capital fund. We are generally focused on the best teams building solutions for really important problems across biotech, life science tools and diagnostics, as well as health tech. We tend to be stage agnostic. We've done everything from seed a company out of a lab through a growth capital buyout. So we have a wide range of what we do, but we're really laser focused on our thesis. So looking forward to meeting all of you. And my path to venture capital has been through operating companies. So I joined the venture capital side about 2 years ago. I was at a Northpond portfolio company and then transitioned over to the investing side.
Hi there, everyone. My name is Deval Lashkari. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. So I'm with Telegraph Partners. Our firm's been around for just over 20 years now. We are based in San Francisco, but we've got colleagues all over the U.S. We are an investor that focuses on tools, diagnostics, device companies. We don't invest in therapeutic businesses, but we really do like to provide all of the technologies and capabilities that enable better drug discovery, development, and delivery. Our approach has really been to partner with innovative life science companies. And so we will identify companies at all stages. They might be early ideas all the way through to established businesses inside of larger organizations. And if there's an opportunity to partner with them, we will do that, provide them with growth capital. But then more importantly, I think, is to spend time with them, helping to define their strategy, helping them to really build out their businesses to get them to scale and to profitability. We are investing out of our fourth fund. We're in the process of raising, actually, our fifth fund right now. We have just around $1 billion under management. And we have a small team, 10 investment professionals, all different backgrounds. My background is in life sciences, and that's, in fact, how I got to the venture side. I was an entrepreneur. After finishing up my graduate work, started a couple of life science tools companies, had a great experience, ended up wearing lots of hats to create businesses at that commercial scale. And then after exiting those, teamed up with three of my colleagues to start Telegraph Partners in 2000.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jenny Barba. It's a pleasure to be here, Kelvin, and the whole team that put this together. Thank you. I'm the founder of Features Capital. This is our first debut, so launching this week, and focusing on medical devices, targeting a $50 million fund with a couple of deals actively in the hopper. Focusing on seed, Series A, some opportunistic growth, smaller check sizes than my fellow panelists here, and really focusing on two major things. Number one, some underserved founders who may not have access through Stanford or MIT that really have phenomenal technology, some IP, and path to market through traditional device, FDA, so not scared of FDA or product design and commercialization. And then really also focusing on hardcore medical devices. When I talk to people who ask, well, what about therapeutics and what about all these other areas? My background for the past 20 years has been working with brilliant founders, brilliant teams, and helping them through these challenges that were just mentioned on the previous panel, knowing and anticipating, talking, thinking, really being there for them. I've lived through down markets. I know and I've seen what can happen. I've been a banker in my previous life at Hambrecht & Quist and JP Morgan and Piper Jaffray on the medical device team. And I've been on the venture and LP side now for 6 years. So launching my own fund, I have a partner who's a biomedical engineer. He's been an operator. And our plan is to really bring those technical skills and additional skills to the founders and the teams who maybe have never done this before, but they're a physician, they're a biomedical engineer, they've come out of an accelerator, they've never built a clinical trial, they've never worked with a CRO. And so really tapping into our global networks and strategic networks to help them mitigate risk and also drive forward to create change and technologies that can save lives. Thanks.
Very cool. I was thinking we do some quick questions, just get some fast takes from everyone and then turn it over to Q&A. One thing I'd be curious to hear from you guys is there's been a lot of talk about larger secular trends in VC. Deal sizes have gone up, valuations have gone up, fund sizes have gone up. New industries have appeared that were fairly nascent, even unheard of, 5 and 10 years ago, comp bio, synth bio. I'd be curious, in each of your own practices, what do you think has been the most salient trend that you've experienced, perhaps that surprised you in the past 2 years? Jenny, would you like to start?
Sure. Well, having been in this market for 20 years, when I was on the deal side and we were doing a private placement for a Series B or a Series C, there were 40 device VCs on our target list. We knew all of them. Everybody knew each other. And there was a lot of capital for companies. And I think the challenge now is really finding the right VC fund to be your partner and to be there at the early stages. That's where the valuations are more attractive from our standpoint. However, that's where the heavy lifting is. And I always go back to what is the definition of venture capital? Well, it's allocating capital, which is a commodity, yet also mitigating risk and taking that risk. And I think a lot of times VCs forget that there's that part of our definition. So one thing I've seen with other funds, and we all see this, other funds coming into life sciences and coming into devices and therapeutics early who haven't been through the trenches for the past 20 years. And so that's a big shift where maybe it's like one person on their team who's doing it. And you've seen this, you've been around for 20 years. So really sticking to the knitting, I would say, is the most important thing. There's been a shift a little bit, other people coming in. And so for all of us to stick to the knitting of traditional VC and supporting the companies.
That seems fair. A lot of new folks have appeared, a lot of generalists, for better and for worse. And I guess as very technical and deep investors, it's been a very different environment now than it was, in the past when it was much more specialized. Deval, in your experience, what surprised you in the past few years? What do you think is one of the biggest trends?
I don't know that this is a surprise. I think it was a natural evolution at some level, which is you're starting to see a lot more virtualization of even some of the tools and diagnostics businesses, right? Where you can outsource some of the development work, you can outsource the analytic work and so on. what that means is that you don't necessarily need to have as much capital in the early stages. I think as an investor, it's really it's helped us manage the risk that you take going in, because the amount of capital that you're putting in could be used much more efficiently, and you can get a lot more out of it that way. And I think, so for us, we've tended to focus over the past, I'd say, 4 to 5 years on companies that are providing a lot of those services. They might be contract research organizations, CMOs, contract manufacturing outfits, and so on. But we think that those are terrific opportunities where you can continue to innovate as an entrepreneur, but not have to build a whole infrastructure around that.
That's cool. There's a new category of infrastructure companies. It's made the whole sector more efficient, and you're taking a bet on that infrastructure. Andrea, how about in your practice?
Yeah, I think we see a few things. I think we see sort of a split between people looking for capital and then people looking for partnership with capital. So I think we see a lot, many companies will get multiple term sheets, a lot of sort of generalist capital, powerful capital that can give them as a really significant moat and sort of give them enough runway to move, but maybe less expertise that you were talking about, Jenny, right? And some founders, that's great for. They've been around the block and they know how to do it and they already have their own network, but then others really sort of turn to funds like Northpond and say, well, we know you understand our product and we know you understand the science. Can you help us with this? And I may not need the highest term sheet right now because I really just need somebody in my boardroom who can help me commercialize or operate or get to the product dev milestone. So we see a split, and it always surprises me, sometimes when a founder takes one option or the other. So I think the thing that I think most about is how to find the founder and how to make sure that the right founders find us, because it is a two-way street, and you do have us in your boardroom, and we are going to work with you and make sure our goals are aligned. So I think that's just a really important skill or something to triage to and make sure you're focusing on as you get capital, because there's a lot of capital available even with shaky markets. So just how to think about the right capital for you and the right partner. We think about that a lot.
I like that. Chad.
Yeah, I'll throw a couple stats out. In 2020, there was $156 billion invested in the United States venture capital market. That's tech, across tech and life science. In 2021, it was $330 billion. So it's the most I've ever seen in 20 years since I've been doing this. But at the same time, we do a lot on the public side as well. We do a lot of small cap public deals. The small cap public market's down 40% on the biotech side, right? The XBI is down roughly 40% since February of last year. So what's surprising to me is all this capital flooding the market into private companies on the life science side, and the market caps of the existing public companies have been terrible. They've been horrible. They've been hammered. Just as an example, we had a company in our portfolio in Q4. They got FDA approval, NDA approval on the first shot. The stock went down 17.5%. I don't get that at all. So to me, the most surprising thing is this weird disconnect between the private investment and the public investors, right? I can't figure it out. I don't know. I'd love to be up here telling you I'm the smartest guy in the room, but I'm clearly not. So that's surprising to me, is just that massive disconnect between public and private. And I will say, on the life science side, we're in March of 22. As of February, I think 12th or something, there was $6 billion invested into the life science space in private investment. That's on record for being the largest quarter ever, right? I think the record's 11 billion, and we're tracking to beat that. So, again, still that disconnect that's very surprising to me.
I want to toss out one final question. And then let's open it up to the audience. It's going to be a big shift in gears. There's been a lot of discussion nationally across industries over the past decade of what does diversity and inclusion mean in our society, in our industries. I'm curious, both at a strategic level, how do you guys think about diversity and inclusion? And in a very concrete way, day to day as investors, what does that mean? How do you work towards it? There's a huge question, so I'll let you guys jump in.
I can jump, yeah. I'll grab it. So I think two things. So there are some incredible initiatives that are rolling around and getting more support. There's an initiative called BIG, B-I-I-G, which is Biotech Inclusion and Diversity Group, and that is across like all biotechs, lawyers, VCs, you name it, and they're really sort of driving from NVCA documents up through diligence lists and then from the boardroom. So there's some great resources and industry initiatives that are really starting to drive from the aspiration of the idea to the actual tactics, right? So how do you look at a founding team of 2 and expect diversity, right? If there's 2 people in a lab that were best friends and decided to start a company, versus when you get to your A, what should you expect, and how do you think through that? So there's some great tools that are being developed for investors and for founders to think about how to approach it. So I think it's nice to see the maturity of those. I mean, in general, we're driving towards just awareness though, right? How do we think about it? Where is it evident? Where is it buried? Where do we need to sort of talk about it more? But in general, we're very aware when we go into diligence what the founding team looks like, what the board looks like. It's really hard to look at a company that is monochromatic and think that there's a reason for that in this day and age when there's so much sort of awareness and change inertia towards it. So we're thinking about it, trying to take step by step, but I think the industry itself has some nice tools that are coming out to support it.
Well, let me just add, it absolutely is an important question, so thanks for bringing it up. It was a very broad question, and so maybe let me start by even suggesting that we ought to be thinking about it from a very fundamental level. Just how is that diversity being brought into our space of life sciences and healthcare? And one of the things we're doing, I sit on the board of governors over at the med school at Stanford where I do my graduate work, and one of the things we've done is to really foster this environment of encouraging women and minorities to take a more active role, not just in the academic sciences, but also in other career paths with their academic background. And so I think it's important because I don't know that that's something that's happened over the years in a proactive way. And so what we're trying to do is to foster a lot more opportunities at that level, just so that they understand and appreciate that these are avenues that are open to them. Now, with that, we're also trying to do the same thing with our portfolio companies. Like you mentioned, it's hard when you've got a small company to have that level of diversity, but as you start to gain scale, I think it's really important to be actively engaged in that process, having that discussion. We did an analysis of our portfolio companies. Currently our active portfolio employs about 1,300 employees across all of our companies, and over 50% are women, and about 25% are minorities. And so I think just having that kind of awareness is important, and trying to make sure that you drive towards more equality in that stage.
That's fair. I think that, go ahead, Jenny.
I'm going to jump in here, and I just wanted to thank you for bringing up this topic. I think it could be a whole panel. It's 2022. This just needs to be normalized, and I've been typically the only woman in my math class, only woman in my AP Chem class, only woman in ice hockey team, you name it, on the ski hill. So it's time, right? And for me, as a fund manager, 9 out of 10 of my top pipeline companies fit this criteria. That's women, founders, CEOs, ethnic minorities, veterans. I think that's a really important component of our talent pool. And then I have an LP who's mandated that I track all of the stats of my portfolio and their teams as their investment. And so that's a heavy lift from my standpoint, from an admin for like the next 10 years of my fund plus. And I hope my founders are going to be okay with all of this tracking. But I think also from the LP standpoint, it's hot on their topics, and ESG, in devices with disposables, and what are we doing for the earth and the planet, and manufacturing and supply chain. But from a diversity standpoint, there's additional things we can do to support our teams, such as, hey, who's on your clinical advisory board? Okay, well, who else could be on the clinical advisory board? Who are the top podium speakers or top researchers in this field? And hey, let's make this a diverse thoughtful group. The same with boards. In the boardroom, maybe it's not all investors. It can be scientists, it can be physicians, it can be people in the industry. And also always looking multiple layers in, so commercialization managers, sales force, physicians, who else can be in that next tier and supporting the companies in the industry, strategics, to say, hey, who on your team might be a good fit for this board? And then really just promoting people and saying, hey, have you met this person? Have you met this person? There's 2 great groups that I'm a part of, MedTech Women. So if anyone ever needs talent, they have a whole talent database. If you ever need speakers, they have a database for speakers. And then MedTech Color, which launched last year. Their pitch competition, I believe, is tomorrow. And you can go on their website, you can see who's pitching, very accessible groups. So, and then there's a whole bunch of other groups popping up like that. So just being proactive and always, I think, having it in the back of our minds of like, who else is out there? Like, who don't I know? Maybe in Ohio or Georgia or other places as well. And that's why we're here. So thanks.
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak from experience. We closed our first fund. We're on fund 2 now. We closed our first fund in 2019, and it's 5 dudes. It's 5 guys, right? Managing half $500 million. That's not easy. We specifically set out in 2019 to hire a female because we're looking at a lot of women's health companies, and I can look at spreadsheets all day long, right? But I would love to hear from an actual potential patient of what she thinks about this on our team. And we set out in 2019 to hire a female. We hired her in January of this year. It took us that long to find someone. We had recruiters. We had, specifically reaching out to females. So it took us a very long time to find them. And we're trying to hire another right now. And my expectation is it may be another 8 to 9 months before we find the candidate. Hopefully there'll be more. But there's not. Again, we're reaching out, trying to do our best. So if this is also a plea to the audience, if anyone has a junior level, 2 years out of college daughter that they would want to work in venture, call me, let me know, because we are absolutely hiring right now. So yeah, but my point is it hasn't been easy, even though we've been specifically looking. And I think that's due to a lack of potential graduates coming out of, say, finance or economics or math programs. But that's something we're trying to do more of.
Very cool. I think that oftentimes, I'll just make a few quick points. I think we covered a lot of ground. Oftentimes when VCs invest, it's when companies go from a few people to hiring suddenly a whole bunch of people. So to Deval and Andrea's point, prioritizing, when you have that phase where suddenly you're hiring 50 people, really prioritizing bringing a diverse group of people to the table. I think that that's important. I think that Jenny, the resources you mentioned, I think are terrific. Andrea, big as well. So definitely, guys, we'll be here. I don't want to oblige my co-panelists, but we'll be around. I think that we can also circulate some of those resources. On my side, the thing that I found most useful is making it a very big point to source beyond arm's length, which is really hard. There are a lot of communities where deals just bubble to the surface. In the Bay Area, being in the shadow of Stanford, Stanford deals just bubble to the top, but making it a point, source aggressively, look beyond arm's length, look at, founders who look nothing like me with a totally different lived experience from very different backgrounds, especially for very early stage stuff. And to Chad's point, patience, priority, and put a lot of time in. Thank you, guys. I'd love to open this up to the audience for questions to our panelists. Feel free to ask about things that we discussed or other things as well. I see one hand over here.
Hi, I'm Paul Lakin. I'm one of the retired executives up in Park City, but I did my career mainly in San Diego as a serial entrepreneur. I started my first company back in the 80s. So I've really watched the venture capital community kind of evolve over time. My question kind of goes back to the last panel. One of the things we've seen in venture capital is the size of Series A rounds really changing over time. For some of us who've been around for a while, miraculously changing. But we heard kind of two models on the last panel. One was the, raise only the funds you need to get to the next big milestone and then raise the next one. And then we had the other model, which was raise a big amount of money right up off the bat to allow for failure and going forward, learn from that failure and continue to build. I'm just interested in how the panel views those various models.
Go ahead, Jen.
I'll jump in. So I think depending on the subsector, it does vary immensely. Devices, there's typical stages and steps versus therapeutics. And I'd love the Denali CEO to go on the road with us and meet with LPs and just say, some are just going to fail. And you're like, oh, God. Like, LPs do not want to hear that. Like anything, So a couple of things. So we talked a little bit earlier about like being capital efficient has really driven into ways that we can outsource product development, clinical trial management, things like that. So we can be capital efficient on one end, which is terrific on seed and Series A. But then when FDA, for example, I don't know how many people are waiting to hear from FDA right now? 1, 2, 3.
See some hands off far on the side.
Okay, so FDA is taking a long time, a really long time. When someone has to pay payroll because they're waiting for an approval to raise their Series B, and it's taking 10 times as long, that's a challenge we have to face as existing investors to either bridge or raise another round. These are challenges. So the market is also dictating part of this, and every fund's different, every company's different, but being capital efficient is critical as financial investors.
I'll also add that it really depends on how you want to build your business. I think it absolutely does make sense in certain situations where raising a lot of capital to get to an answer where you know whether something's going to work or not is required, and that tends to be in the therapeutic space. We tended to focus in the life sciences tools area, for example, and in that case, you can raise less capital to know whether the technology, the platform is going to work. And then taking it to that next level to actually make it into a commercial product, I think you go out and raise more dollars. But at least for that initial phase, maybe you don't want to have as much dilution. You want to have more control over your product and your company. And I think it's up to you as an entrepreneur to decide what makes the most sense for you. Because I think there's going to be a lot of capital, even if you have just an idea that's available. If you want to go out and raise a seed round of $50 million for a tools company, that is available, and there's nothing wrong with that if that's the strategy you want to take. We've tended to not do that from our side. We try to take a more capital efficient approach, raise smaller rounds, even sometimes just one round to say, okay, is this something that's going to get you to a commercial stage? And then you can decide how much capital is really required. So again, as an entrepreneur, you've got to decide what is the strategy you want to take in building your business, and then find the right partner that's aligned with that approach.
And I loved seeing the numerous hands that went up that have raised non-dilutive capital. Take advantage of that. That is huge. It's a lot of work to write these proposals and grants and SBIR and all the military grants, all of this, federal government, or partnerships, or do pilots with a hospital, paid pilots with a partner, non-dilutive capital from a strategic. That's validation. That's huge and very capital efficient.
Yes.
Close enough. I'll just try to speak loudly. So, previous CEO of a diagnostic company, current CEO of a bioprocessing tools company. So, question is dynamics of Utah and dynamics of venture capital. One during COVID and Silicon Slopes. David down there representing Silicon Slopes. BioHive, right? So we have tech and life sciences. You're seeing a lot of crossover. Used to be public and private. Now it's tech and healthcare, right? Section 32 and some of these other folks. So maybe Deval and Andrea specifically, Northpond invested in $80 million Series B of a SaaS-based bioreactor company, right? Culture biosciences. You heard Ryan talking about bringing Utah's first biomanufacturing facility to Utah. That's way cool, right? And Deval enabling biomanufacturing. So speak a little bit about that crossover, seeing new smart tech getting integrated sensors, new tech, not digital health, right? What this changing landscape, and how are you looking at deals now and maybe syndicating deals with people you didn't syndicate before?
Yeah, I think we've always been sort of focused on seeing where technologies can impact how we do healthcare, how we develop drugs, and so on. For us, that's always been part of our strategy, which is, are there tools or technologies that are enabling some aspect of science in the research side, but can make the crossover into clinical applications? So what we've seen over the years, though, is that it's not just the biology. It has to bring in other disciplines, whether it's engineering, chemistry, software, informatics, analysis, and so on. And so to your point, you're seeing more and more of that right now. And you're seeing that at all levels, including, and I think you all have experience in this, in the manufacturing side, in scaling things up, right? More smart sensors coming in, different analytic capabilities for predictive analysis. We've got a portfolio company in the spatial biology space, right, where you're looking at tumor biopsies in a much more meaningful way that requires a high degree of informatics analysis tools. We're in Utah. We've got one company in our that we partnered with, Cartera. Josh Ekman is the CEO here. He's got a tool to analyze proteins, and it generates a lot of data and requires a lot of informatic capabilities. So I think that's going to continue to happen. And what that does mean, though, is that it brings in a certain level of expertise that maybe the traditional venture capitalists don't have, which is on the analytic side, on the manufacturing side. And so partnering with other venture groups or even strategics at some level, I think can make a lot of sense going forward.
Yeah, we view the world as a convergent technology space. So we look at, there's two sort of ways we see the space converge. One, you're right, is on the bioprocess side. And I think those tools, it's a massive focus for our fund, both from a software automation as well as the actual tools in manufacturing. And what we see is a lot of convergence, right, from the development side into manufacturing. And there's a lot of manual, painful steps that lack measurement and data across those steps. So we're investing there very proactively. The second space that we see convergence between is what it takes to get from development of a drug to the clinic. And a lot of tools that work in the clinic work in clinical trials. And a lot of tools that work in clinical trials, guess what? They work in remote care for the clinic. So we look at the universe, our tech practice looks from the lab to the patient. And that sometimes that's mind-boggling when we talk to entrepreneurs, right? But it's so true, right? If I can find a great data platform in pharma that is relevant for biomanufacturing and PD and back to the phase. And oh, by the way, those teams still pull preclinical data, right? So we have to start thinking longitudinally about data, not just in a patient environment, but also where these technologies are developed. So we view it as critical. How do we try to win there? We try to hire really smart people on our team that have a wide range of expertise. So we have PhDs in AI, PhDs in neuro, PhDs in protein, SynBio. So we tend to sort of power up our internal capabilities and then try to help these companies actually sort of see those convergence and drive the convergence. But it's a great opportunity.
And Utah is the prime place to do it. I mean, you just drive down I-15 and boom, boom, boom. It's software, tech, healthcare, manufacturing, supply chain, diagnostic. I mean, this is the hotbed to be able to do that. So it's the people here, you guys in this room. I'm just going to throw this out there. If anyone's working on blockchain for supply chain management, manufacturing, anything in healthcare, hit me up. I want to talk to you. I think that is a new wave that we definitely need to be on top of. So, but Utah, you're doing it. Like, it's all right here.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Usman Sattar. I'm a medical doctor by profession, but I'm doing my PhD right now in biomedical informatics at the University of Utah. I work with a couple of VC firms in tech due diligence of some of the startups. They are in digital health space, so I'm wondering if you invest in digital health startups, especially digital therapeutics, direct-to-patient startups, and products and services, and what has been your experience in that space?
Seeing a lot of nodding from my co-panelists. I think this is a trigger word for VCs these days. Who'd like to jump in?
Yeah, we absolutely invest there. We've so happy to talk one-on-one if you're interested. But we back to sort of the convergent theme, right? If you're going to be able to, if you think about a platform that works in the development area and how it can sort of maybe improve a clinical trial, it probably has some other ways to think about it. So in terms of the clinical setting, recruitment, retention, adherence, it's a very short distance between many of these concepts. But I think, I don't know our last count that's public, that's disclosed, but maybe 15 companies that sort of span that type of investment areas that are in our portfolio. So we're pretty active there.
Yeah, we too have a number of digital health companies in our portfolio. We see a ton of them. Digital therapeutics, I'm a little hesitant. I think we're still in early innings on that particular industry segment. Primarily, I'm a little concerned about reimbursement. Right, that's the big thing that we're keeping a very close eye on, is will payers actually pay for these digital therapeutics? We've seen a lot of them, and there are a number of very successful ones. But again, I don't think the book has quite been written on the reimbursement landscape, so we're a little hesitant to jump in at this point.
Yeah, and I would agree. I think this is a really interesting area to be in. We have tended to work with companies that have a digital health component, but there might be a device or some instrument associated with it at some level, just because that's what we're more comfortable with and that's what we've done historically. That said, going forward, I think it's going to be more and more pure data-driven type of capabilities. And for us, what's going to be important is how do you differentiate yourself and how do you really protect or create some barriers for your business and your business model.
It's great to see a physician involved in this. One of the companies I've advised and my partners advised very closely with is a software, a SaaS enterprise company that is taking and is utilizing the data from wearables such as Garmin, Apple Watch, Whoop, or a Fitbit, and then utilizing that to then customize and personalize stress management tools, and then applying that on an enterprise level. So it's there has to always be data associated with it. Like, so reimbursement, of course, but like clinically, from our standpoint as VCs, is clinically, is there validated data? Is this changing? Is it preventing or changing behavior or improving disease management or remote patient monitoring? And then also for traditional devices, what we're seeing a lot of is a tool associated with the traditional device to then collect data. So it's interoperative patient monitoring. You know, there's a device that also then has a connectivity component. I think that's all here to stay. It's with all devices.
Sounds like, to summarize, optimism and caution, sort of directionally excited, but I think every person has boxes they want to check as they go down that path, but sort of directionally optimistic about it.
So, as I've been tracking over the last 24 to 36 months, there have been a lot of family offices, hedge funds, private equity groups, and VCs that have begun to, and big service providers begin to open offices here. To the four of you, are any of you opening offices here? Are you considering it? And if not, why not and when?
This is a great question.
Can you introduce us to those family offices? So I used to live here. I lived in Cottonwood Heights. Kelvin was my mayor at the time. We moved to Vermont for family reasons, for my dad's health. Big fan of skiing at Alta, so I'm not opposed to spending a lot of time here, if that helps.
So we are based in San Francisco, but we have colleagues spread throughout. And for for us and me personally, I've really enjoyed being out here, spent a lot of time meeting with companies, spending time, and like I said earlier, we've partnered with Cartera here in Utah to provide them with the growth capital to build their business. There is no lack of innovation out here. I mean, I think this is just a phenomenal area of the U.S. to focus on healthcare and life sciences. For us, it's an hour flight, so it's less of an issue, honestly. That said, absolutely am proactively working to create a stronger presence out here. I think it's really important because one of the things that I've noticed is, while I said there's no lack of innovation, I think having some more executive talent, having more financial resources here would be a terrific combination.
I'm a Salt Lake native, so I'm always here. But in general, Northpond's view is just get on the plane. If we wanted to put an office everywhere where there was exceptional talent, we would spend more on real estate than we would investing in companies. So I think we look at it like, let's just get where we need to be. And I'm a big fan of the Altitude Lab. And Chandana, I don't know if you're here, I saw you earlier. So I think the more we can sort of bring the talents that we have in our fund across the country to here, that's sort of how we do it. We're big fans of the airlines. We get on the plane.
Yeah, we have an office out here. It's called My Basement in Park City, which is kind of weird when you have people over. But no, we too are based in the Bay Area in Redwood City, and all of our partners are out there with the exception of me. And we listen, it's true when we're talking to LPs who invest in our fund, they always say, well, wait a minute, you're in Park City, Utah. These other guys are in the Bay Area. Why are you in Park City? Because that's not exactly the place you want to hear if you're an LP. But yeah, we jump on planes. I jump on planes constantly. I'm going to the Bay Area. I'm going on Monday, and I'm there about once every other week or so. But we're not planning to open one up. I would love it if we did, but I think right now the perception is still a little off. That again, we're a VC debt and equity fund that is based in Park City, Utah. The people, oh, okay, sounds interesting.
I'll toss out that not only we're Salt Lake based. I'm the one outlier Bay Area partner. A whole bunch of my portfolio CEOs are here today. Deals that we did from inception through several financings, all during the pandemic, and I'm meeting most of these CEOs in person for the first time today, which is exciting. I'll be tactically having them bump into you guys, over coffee while you guys are here over the course of the day, but we're personally quite into the Salt Lake ecosystem. I want to check if we have time, how we're doing. I'm not seeing anyone stopping me, so I'd love to continue questions. Let's see. I think the first hand I saw was here, and then I see a hand over there, and then a third hand over here.
Hi, Jeremy Koff, and I've been coming out here for 12 years. I have a house as well out here. A lot of startup CEOs here, including myself, clinical stage med tech. For each of the panelists in terms of your own prospective funds, can you give an insider's perspective of what it takes to get across to the finish line in terms of funding? Maybe in terms of it's like we get approached by 100 companies a month. We hear 30 pitches. Forget about it if you don't have a warm introduction from start to finish. Count on about 9 months. Just whatever parameters you want to share with us.
Let's rapid fire this. Let's try to get a few questions. Who'd like to go first? What is the process like at a high level, start to finish?
Yeah, let me just start. It's always about the product of the technology, the markets that are being addressed. I think we're open to having conversations, having introductory meetings with really anyone. I mean, that's part of what we do. I enjoy it as a scientist, really hearing about novel technologies. We don't make very many investments, so we do have a lot of criteria. We look at everything from the market opportunity, where is the risk regarding the technology, what's the likely traction that it's going to gain, and are we going to be the right partners? I think that's really important. As you get to know the founder and the team, you want to make sure that there's alignment in a philosophy about how to build businesses. I think that is critical for us. And as a result, we just haven't made very many investments. In 20 years, we invested in about 42 companies. Mm-hmm. So just gives you a sense of what we do. Once we get involved, we like to take active roles. We're not taking day-to-day operating roles, but we like to engage very closely and work as a long-term financial partner with our entrepreneurs.
Okay, so I'll be the balance to that. We're 4 years old and we have 65 announced or portfolio companies. So we're maybe on the higher side of what you look at every year. I have 2 colleagues here too, so we come in forces to make sure that we know everybody. But I think it just comes down to just be upfront. Like, we try to be really upfront. We also try to relationship build with the CEOs and make sure that they like us, because it is a two-way street, because we sit in your boardroom. So we try to be really sort of prescriptive of here's what we're looking for and here's what we need, and to get over our net, so to speak. And then, but I think it's really on the founder to go to the right VCs. Like, he's done, he's not going to do that many deals this year. So you probably better build a great relationship with him, because he's going to want to be really comfortable with you and make sure you have, I'm presuming, right? You're going to want to make sure that they know who you are. And we're going to sort of meet maybe a few hundred companies a year. We're going to keep in touch with as many of them as we can. And then we'll probably do, we did 30 deals last year. So that doesn't mean we'll do 30 this year. We always jump for the right ones, but we know the teams before we invest. So that's a lot of, that's why I said it doesn't matter where I'm based, because we're on a plane to go meet them anyway. So I think it's just, I would be really smart about who you're approaching, right? Don't come to me with a therapeutics deal. I don't do therapeutics, right? I send you to the guy who does therapeutics. Like, make sure you look at their portfolio first. And if you're approaching a specific partner, what is that partner invested in? What boards are they on? What are they interested in? Where could they add value to you? And if they're not the right partner, just be upfront with them. Hey, Andrea, I know you don't do therapeutics, but I noticed your colleague does. Would you mind introducing me to? Absolutely, right? So you just have to sort of do your homework on who you're talking to, because I think it goes a long way. I very much appreciate when someone comes to me and says, hey, I know you don't do this, but do you know anyone that does? Or, hey, I think you do this. Would you take a look at what I'm working on? So I just think candor is really important. It just helps. It'll save you time as you fundraise.
This could also be a whole panel for founders. Data really is the holy grail as you get to FDA and protocol design and thinking about reimbursement, things like that. A path to data is critical in my standpoint. The other component is, will somebody use this? So having that validation or the market assessment, physician input of what's the medical need you're solving, and then will people use this, and how will this be a health economic benefit to the system, the physician, the payer, the patient. It's showing all of those components, and then relationship. It's really building relationships before you need to raise money a year, 2 years in advance. Some of the companies I'm funding, I've known the CEO for 2 years, and now's the right time. So.
Yeah, on our side, look, we're doing mostly debt financings, so it's typically a little bit later stage, because the underwriting we're doing and the bet we're making is that we can get repaid in a 3 to 4 year period, right? Our deal sizes tend to be fairly large, $10 to $30 million on a per deal basis, and you're right, we see about 10 deals a week, 10 to 12 deals a week, and we'll do 20 to 25 a year, right? So we see a lot of things, good deals, but they may not be a proper use for, say, debt, right? They may be a better equity bet than a debt bet. So that's the big question we're trying to figure out. Is this a good debt problem that the company's trying to solve, or is it an equity problem? And then, again, we're not trying to underwrite to 5x our money or 10x our money. We're trying to underwrite to 12 to 15% on our money, right? But the key to that is we can't lose it, right? We have to get it back, because that'll destroy a debt fund. So that's what we're looking at. Is the company mature enough that we think they can continue to raise capital, or they can pay us off through an exit, or some sort of larger financing event in a 3 year period, 4 year period.
That's fair. It seems like the theme here is that every one of your funds has an internal logic to it, what kind of deals you do, what stage you do, how many you do. And as a founder, it seems like the theme is, understand the logic as best as you can, cleaning a website, reviewing, public databases. What is the logic of this fund? What's the logic of the partner? And then part of it too is feel comfortable to reach out. I think everyone here is like, reach out. Worst case, we'll refer you to one of our colleagues. Worst case, we'll say no, but, understand the logic, but also feel comfortable reaching out. I saw one hand over here.
Hi, I had a question as a founder perspective, the diversity of what a vision of an entrepreneur looks like for potential investors or angel investors or even committees on a grant. So my question is, as a physical therapist, we're very crafty. We like to be one-on-one, and we tend to do things like orthotics, and it takes time. We can't do mass-produced tech right off the bat. And it feels like in the investor landscape, they want the hockey stick, but it's going to take a little while. And so with that theme of data, my vision of that is evidence-based. We need to, as professionals, come up with evidence-based practices and products. So my reason being here today is I'm sponsoring a mechanical engineering capstone team at the U to do the tech I want to do. And I have a business in Cottonwood Heights to thread it in. The capstone team is $17,500, just a bite size. Writing an SBIR grant, but that's going to be submitted in April. What do we do from now until next summer or whatnot to fund the vision in bite-sized ways to get our tech out and be potentially scalable? Once it goes into my profession, it will go because we're all licensed and PTs can move things like other professions very well. But how can I fund something like that in that in-between hybrid space that's small? And is the landscape favoring things like that rather than $1 million? I don't need $1 million. But it's hard to find those little bite sizes, and I just thought maybe you guys had a solution.
Interesting. If I understand your question, the question is, how do you do, in those very early stages, where do you go for small pots of money? And a second part of your question is a VC the right partner at that stage? Is that a fair way of representing the question?
Yeah, because with the capstone team, I negotiated them down from $8,000 up front to $3,000 because those will be paid quarterly. So it's just things are like Jenny said, like they're coming in really quickly, like costs before you get your grant or FDA approval. So how do you just, your vision is there. It just, you have to be creative of how to fund that.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that comes to mind are maybe some of these newly announced accelerators, incubators, things like that. Friends and family is critical in our industry. Angels List, Allocate, Assure are all great platforms to bring in friends and family and to launch early stage. I've seen some great success stories with Angels List and Allocate and Assure. I've participated as an angel on those deals. So, and also just getting the word out, talking to someone, and they're like, oh, that's what you need? Here you go. Like, it's just constantly fundraising and telling people this is possible as you're building this.
I like that. I think that's a really good answer. I see a few folks signaling. I want to make sure. Do we have time for one more question? Oh. We do not have time. Okay, excellent. Well, this has been a delight. I really appreciate all of my co-panelists for coming out, and we all appreciate the audience for jumping in. We'll be around. Feel free to approach us throughout the day today. I think several of my colleagues will be skiing tomorrow as well, and we're excited to meet as many of you as we can. Thank you, everyone.